Exposing the New York Times, Genocidal Journalism in Defense of Israel. The New York Times' recent editorial by Bret Stephens has sparked intense debate, particularly among those who see the conflict in Gaza through a different lens. The core issue at hand is whether Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Bret Stephens, a columnist for the New York Times, recently penned an op-ed titled, "No, Israel is not committing genocide in Gaza." His argument, however, has been met with significant backlash, especially from international organizations that have documented extensive human rights violations in the region. Stephens begins his piece with a provocative question: if the Israeli government's intentions and actions are truly genocidal, why hasn't it been more methodical and vastly more deadly? This line of reasoning, while intended to challenge the notion of genocide, glosses over the extensive destruction and loss of life in Gaza. The Israeli military's bombardment of civilian infrastructure, including homes, hospitals, and schools, has left much of the Gaza Strip in ruins. This systematic destruction seems far from accidental, raising serious questions about the intent behind these actions. One of the most contentious points in Stephens' argument is his dismissal of the high death toll. He cites the official Palestinian death count of nearly 60,000 in less than 2 years, and wonders why the number isn't in the hundreds of thousands. This is the part most people miss. The sheer scale of destruction and loss of life is already staggering, and the fact that it hasn't reached an even higher number doesn't negate the severity of the situation. According to a study published in the Lancet Medical Journal, the true death toll in Gaza could exceed 186,000. This figure alone underscores the gravity of the crisis. Stephens also fails to address the broader context of Israel's actions in Gaza. The deliberate targeting of civilians, including the killing of at least 17,400 children since November 2024, is a stark indication of the intent to harm. Moreover, the forced starvation of the Gazan population, with reports of at least 15 Palestinians, including 4 children, starving to death in a single day, further complicates the narrative. And this is the part most people miss. Depriving a population of food and water is a form of genocide, as defined by the UN Genocide Convention. Stephens argues that there is no evidence of an Israeli plan to deliberately target and kill Gazan civilians. However, the repeated bombing of hospitals and ambulances, along with the systematic destruction of essential infrastructure, suggests otherwise. The chaos in the food distribution system, which has led to the deaths of over 1,000 Palestinians trying to secure aid, is another critical aspect that Stephens overlooks. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF, backed by Israel and the US, has been criticized for concentrating large numbers of starving Palestinians in a single location, making them easy targets for Israeli forces. Stephens' refusal to acknowledge the historical context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is another significant oversight. The establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 involved the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, a process that has continued in various forms to this day. The ongoing efforts to erase the Palestinian presence, both physically and conceptually, align with the definition of genocide under international law. Despite these facts, Stephens warns against the promiscuous use of the term genocide, arguing that it should be reserved for uniquely horrific crimes. But here's where it gets controversial. By dismissing the use of the term in the context of Gaza, Stephens is effectively downplaying the severity of the situation and the suffering of the Palestinian people. The Israeli military's close relationship with U.S. corporate media, including the New York Times, has often led to a sanitized portrayal of Israeli actions, further complicating the public's understanding of the conflict. As the world watches the ongoing crisis in Gaza, the debate over the use of the term genocide remains heated. What do you think? Is the term genocide appropriate in this context, or is it being used too loosely? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Scholars challenge genocide claims in Gaza. A rebuttal to Omer Bartov. Using the word genocide is like pulling the pin on a moral grenade. Once thrown, it causes irreversible damage, and we must be absolutely certain of our target, because the accusation itself changes everything. That's why, when a distinguished scholar like Omer Bartov, a respected authority on the Holocaust and genocide studies at Brown University, levels this charge against Israel, it demands not just attention, but a rigorous and thoughtful response. While we hold Professor Bartov's historical scholarship, particularly concerning the Nazi regime's systematic murder of 6 million Jews, in the highest regard, we find ourselves in profound disagreement with the argument he presented in his New York Times op-ed, "I am a genocide scholar. I know it when I see it." His conclusion, we believe, misapplies this uniquely horrific term to the current war in Gaza. Here's a deeper look at why. A crucial piece of the puzzle seems to be minimized in Professor Bartov's analysis, the catalyst for this entire devastating war. He gives only a passing nod to the event that ignited the conflict, the Hamas-led terrorist attack on October 7, 2023. This wasn't a conventional military strike. It was an explosion of murderous savagery targeting civilians, characterized by rape, the mutilation of women and girls, and the abduction of over 200 hostages into a brutal captivity that continues for many. To begin a conversation about Israel's response without fully centering the unprecedented nature of this initial attack is to start the story in the middle. But here's where the argument gets truly controversial. The term genocide isn't a philosophical concept open to broad academic interpretation. It's a specific legal charge with a very high and narrow bar for proof. As Professor Bartov cert.